The concept of an open house is so well known that whenever you think of real estate agents, it may be one of the first things you associate with them. However, it may be time to end the practice, or at least for sellers to better understand their purpose and whether they want to have one on their own property or not. I'm Peter Boskus with Red Cedar Real Estate, and today we're going to talk about what the real purpose of an open house is and how, in the current market, greedy agents are using them in ways that can actually hurt your home sale and cost you thousands. Back before a little invention called the internet, open houses were a critical tool for an agent to sell properties. Without the vast amount of information available online for buyers to comb over prior to seeing the home in person, open houses provided buyers the first actual peek as to what the interior of a home looked like. Since there wasn't a centralized database of what houses were even available for sale, open houses were oftentimes the first indication to home buyers that a house was listed for sale and available to buy. However, now that we live in a world where pictures, video, 3D virtual tours, and so much more are available to buyers, the real question is, why are agents still doing open houses? And more importantly, who do they benefit? There's always been a very specific and time-tested benefit to listing agents to holding open houses. But there's also a new, more sinister reason for them that's cropping up because of the current hot market. The truth is, over the years, open houses have become a lead-generating activity for real estate agents. Very, very few homes are actually sold at an open house. And that's because most of the people who tour open houses are either nosy neighbors or buyers who are so early in the process that they haven't yet started working with a lender or an agent, and they're just getting their feet wet by touring open houses in the area. Buyers who are actively ready to purchase a home have already hired an agent, and they'll be touring the property with their agent during a private tour, not at an open house. So it's clear open house attendees are not an ideal pool of potential buyers for that specific home. However, it is an ideal pool of potential buyer or seller clients for the listing agent. Nosy neighbors may be thinking about selling their home in the future, and buyers that are just starting the process may not have hired an agent yet to help them. So the open house is not an activity to sell your home. It's an opportunity for agents to have conversations with potential clients and market their services. And this has been the case for a very long time, and it's a bit of a dirty secret in real estate circles. In an equal market, meaning a market where houses don't sell immediately and there are just as many buyers as there are sellers, this isn't necessarily a detriment to the home sale. But in the current market, agents have a new reason to hold these open houses that is pretty devious, and it may actually cost you money as the seller. The easiest way to explain what that reason is and how the theory works is with an example. Recently, I was working with a home buyer who was interested in seeing a single-family home listed with a very well-known and established real estate agent team in Ellicott City. Typically, the process is the buyer's agent will use an online scheduling service to choose a time to visit the property to secure an appointment. However, even though this property had just come on the market, there were no appointments available yet. And this was because the agent set a rule that only one agent could show the property every half hour. While many properties in the current market are getting 100 showings or more, this agent had structured his showings in such a way that makes it impossible to have that many showings because there simply aren't enough hours in the day to accommodate the number of interested buyers in the market. When COVID started, this was a very common practice, and this was done in order to keep as few people as possible next to each other and prevent infection from spreading. But when you hear what happens next, you'll realize that's not why this agent has this rule in place. With no appointments available, the only option for my client and I to tour the property was to attend the open house. And the open house was on a Sunday afternoon from 2 until 4 p.m., and that timing becomes very important later as to the agent's motivations later in the story. When we arrived in the neighborhood, there was bedlam. There were roughly 50 people in line to see the home, and parking was impossible due to all the additional cars. Imagine Black Friday at Walmart, but in a small residential neighborhood. And to make matters worse, the neighborhood had fairly narrow streets, and neighbors trying to get to their homes got in shouting matches with home buyers who were blocking the road with nowhere to go. So right off the bat, this was not a pleasant and relaxing atmosphere for buyers interested in exploring the prospect of this home or neighborhood. So we waited in line for about half an hour before we were actually able to get into the house. And when we got to the front door, the agent, who I know well since we do a lot of business together, said, "Peter, as you can see, we have a lot of interested buyers here today, so I'm gonna need you to take 4 minutes total in the house." And that's not a joke. He asked us to look at the entire house in 4 minutes. A $700,000 house, and he was asking buyers to look at the entire house in 4 minutes and make a decision on whether they wanted to spend $750,000 on a property in less time than it takes to get a coffee at Starbucks. This would be bad enough on its own, but he was letting multiple groups of people through the house at the same time, so the house was packed with people, which made it basically impossible to see the home, to get a sense of the layout, the finishes, all the things a buyer may actually want to look at when they're touring a property. And this is how you know there was something suspect about the lack of available appointments for agents to tour the house prior to the open house. There's no legitimate reason to limit the availability of a house to 2 agents per hour for appointments if you're then going to let 30 people in the house at the same time during the open house. Now, previously I mentioned the open house was from 2 until 4 p.m. on a Sunday. This agent also set a deadline for all offers to be submitted on the property by 6 p.m. that same day. That's right. Most of the possible buyers who were able to see this home not only had 4 minutes to tour it, but then they only had a couple of hours to make a decision on whether they wanted to buy the house, and if so, prepare all the necessary documents to do so. And though that may be technically possible, that's an extremely tight timeline that would make it very, very difficult to meet. Imagine leaving the house at 4 o'clock with your agent, having to get updated documents from your lender, and the agent having to drive to their office to prepare 50 to 60 page offer documents, while also discussing all of the terms needed to create those documents, and then the buyer signing all of those documents all within 2 hours. It's just not very realistic. So my client, who was very well qualified and serious, decided not to pursue this home specifically because she didn't feel like she had an opportunity to tour it to make such a huge financial decision, and even if she had, there wasn't enough time for her to consider it and to prepare an offer. And she definitely was not the only buyer to think so. Many of the conversations we overheard while walking through the packed house or in line revolved around what a crazy process the open house was. So this strategy backfired by actually disincentivizing buyers from making offers on the home. Then the next logical question is, why would an agent have this kind of insane process for selling a home, since it's obviously listing the number of agents who can show the home to buyers and actively discouraging other buyers from making offers? This is especially odd considering this is a very well-known and successful agent in the area. The truth is there are 2 reasons for this, and neither of them are good for their client, but great for the agent. The first is simply what we touched on earlier, that the agent is using the open house to get as many contacts as possible to market to after the open house to try to get additional buyer and seller clients. The second is even more sinister, and it goes back to a previous video where we discussed office exclusives. In that video, we detailed how it's in the real estate brokerage's best interest to have both the buyer and seller represented by the same office, since the office keeps basically double the revenue for the company than if the buyer was represented by a different brokerage. We also talked about how that was great for the brokerage, but could cost the sellers thousands and thousands of dollars. This open house process and limited showing policy is just an extension of that same principle. The concept is pretty easy. The agent is limiting the number of agents from outside his own brokerage that can see the house in a reasonable manner. Then he makes it almost impossible for buyers at the open house to submit offers in time for the property. All of this is done to raise the odds that an agent in his own office will represent the buyers on the transaction. Again, this isn't done to benefit the sellers. It's done to line the agent's pockets. And this could cost you money as the seller. After all, if you limit the number of buyers who can make offers on your property, you're lowering the odds that the most aggressive or well-qualified buyers in the market will be making offers on your home. How does the listing agent know that a buyer who couldn't get an appointment because of the showing policy wasn't willing to offer $10,000 more than any of the other offers received? It's simple, he doesn't, and more importantly, he doesn't care. Since my client wasn't interested in this particular property because of the process, I didn't track to see when it sold or for how much. But I had a strong suspicion on how things turned out, so to prepare for this video, I looked up the property in our multiple listing service. Sure enough, the agent who represented the buyers just happened to work for the same brokerage. Funny how that worked out. Your house is your asset, and you should be working with an agent who recognizes that and acts in your best interest and not in their own. An agent who limits appointments for other agents and then holds an open house a couple of hours before a deadline for offers is not looking out for your best interest. What they're actually doing is using your home as a lead and money generating machine for themselves, and it could actually cost you money and lead to other headaches during the home selling process. For instance, a lack of access to the property just promotes buyers making offers without actually having seen the property. And we'll discuss in another video how accepting a sight unseen offer is just a terrible idea. When you meet with a real estate agent to discuss selling your home, be sure to ask them if they plan on holding an open house. And if they do, ask them why and when. Be sure to also ask about their appointment rule strategy. An agent should not be limiting appointments to other agents. If the agent is limiting appointments on the home or holding open houses at times that make it impossible for buyers to actually write offers, find another agent who is actually looking out for your best interest. If you like this video and you'd like to learn more about the underbelly of Maryland real estate, make sure that you click like and subscribe so you get alerts for future videos. Thanks.